Hello and welcome to the Business Octopus, the Relevate podcast, where we talk about all things sales, marketing, and technology. I'm Avon, CRM and marketing automation specialist at Relevate. And today I've got Michael. How you going, Michael?
Happy to be here. So I'm Michael Raab, the kind of customer success SaaS professional. I've been working in tech for about 20 years. So I've played all sorts of different roles across the customer journey, and a little bit about me.
And then go, oh, this is a stressful time. But realistically, whatever happens, there's some Armchair Anonymous. They have, I don't know if you've heard that one. It's a podcast, and their thing is always have the mics on, because they interview like really famous people, and they come in and they're like, oh man, I got stuck in such bad traffic. And they might share this funny anecdote or story, and they've missed it. If they didn't have the mics running, they'll have missed some awesome like tidbit or background or something.
Yeah.
And these people, they're famous. They know that they're always on.
Right.
And anything in public is going to be scrutinized. So they need to be careful what they say or they do. Yeah. I think it's clever to do it that way.
Agreed. And then, like you said, you could always go back and edit and tweak. Okay, this story didn't quite hit, so we could take that part out and figure out the rest from there.
I listen to another one called My First Million, and it is, they just start talking. There's no, hey, this is what we do. This is our podcast, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But this is, I can't remember the name of the other guy. One of them is Sam Parr. He's famous for having written a multi-million-dollar newsletter, sold to HubSpot, and still creates content sponsored by HubSpot. But they just literally have a conversation, and it seems more natural. And they go, but this is silly. What do you think? And then it flows really well, and they have some good conversations, and they explore some stuff really well. These podcasts, they do really well.
Yeah, I listened to a few different ones. Like I said, some people do the time to do the introductions. Here's who I am. Here's what we're doing. And some people just flow in, assume the audience knows. Okay, you know this person you're walking. You saw the headline, you saw who's involved, you saw the topic, and you're like, okay, this seems interesting. I'll jump in here and listen to what's going on. You don't necessarily need to know everything about their background and experience to go through that process.
But if you're whispering in like someone's ear for 40 minutes to an hour straight, if someone like I only ever listen to podcasts in the car, because if I'm driving, I do not care about listening to the radio. I care about learning something, or I'll try to discover something I don't know, or like I feel like there's a challenge coming up, and then I'll just listen for stuff in and around that. So it might be mergers and acquisitions, or it might be some complex integration problem, or some scientific thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Something in the area that I'm interested in, because I come up with new terms, new ideas, new search, things that I can research and perspectives, and go, what's actually important? If the body of knowledge is this big, and my arms are like at the end.
Yeah.
And then they go, but you only need to know this much, really. I'm like, thank you for saving me hundreds of hours of time. It's like when you go to school and they give you a textbook and you only read 50 pages of this 3,000 page. So, yeah.
Is all of this really relevant? I don't know. Maybe, possibly, who knows? But I personally am a big music fan. So like I enjoy music in the car, but I also I've started doing audiobooks, and I just listened to a book called Revenue Architecture by Jaco van der Kooi, who is the founder of Winning by Design, if you know who he is. Talking about the bow tie model of GTM and recurring revenue SaaS companies. It was very interesting. Like, I didn't quite realize it was a textbook. I thought it was more like hey, this is like a business book. There's so many like charts and graphs. So I had to go to the website and like download like all the charts and graphs that they refer to while they're doing the audiobook. But it was interesting. I learned quite a bit. Learned about the spiced model, which I hadn't heard about before, versus Medic or MedPick, or you can do it alongside Medic or MedPick or one of those other sales methodologies, or Challenger or Solution, or whatever you're doing. But learned a lot about that piece of the puzzle, and how focusing on the customer success side of things really is important for recurring revenue organizations, and is often ignored because the traditional sales and marketing funnel just ended once they sign a contract, and you just ignore what happens to them after they're a customer, which isn't the reality we're facing anymore.
I remember like there was this big thing of sales sold it, but now what? Like being working in CRM, this is usually the problem we see, is that they've got the sales team, they're like a gun at selling whatever, and then it gets to the delivery side, because everybody's like, they come to us for CRM, which is selling, right? That's what people in their mind go, CRM is for sales, right? But what they miss is that what happens next, and that's that downstream effect of now we've sold the thing, but who is the customer? What's the backstory? What did they talk about? What were the things that was the pain points? And then the delivery team, if they've got insight on that, I don't know why people only give a CRM to salespeople in some businesses. Like they should be giving it to quite a few people in the chain. And obviously that's what we're going to talk about today. But customer success, man, sell one thing, sell 50 things later. But it's so much easier and cheaper to acquire a customer that you've already got than it is to go and pound the pavement, knock on doors and do all of that stuff all over again just to get the next one and then only sell them one thing. Like it's a stupid way to do business if you are not trying to keep your existing customers happy, because they tell their friends.
Absolutely.
Well, I know that one pain point is not having enough information on these people. I know that like we run a CRM implementation company, and maybe I make my own notes. I've got my own sort of things off to the side, and then I paste it into the CRM. But like I'm very big on everybody going and updating the CRM. And me as the, founder CEO, I shouldn't have to do everything. And I am building the team underneath me to go and do all of the things. Like I've got a million things to respond to. Yep. But if I'm not having some sort of putting notes in there or forcing the team to do it, the big thing I'd hate is having to explain stuff to somebody else. Imagine having a 30-minute conversation with everybody in the business that has to do the work underneath or further down the pipeline about that one customer, when now my option is I just mention them on the record and they see everything. Yep. It's ridiculously easy.
Yeah, it's so much easier when you have that kind of seamless process. And I was at a company where I was doing professional service operations role, and the professional service team was complaining about how they didn't necessarily know everything that was going on. So it was manual process at the time in a document, but basically we created a client information form that sales rep had to fill out with all this baseline information and then attach it to the opportunity. So that was there as a reference point. And for deals above a certain size or strategic value, we'd encourage like a 15 to 20 minute quick sync between the sales rep and the CS person or implementation person, whoever was going to take the relationship going forward, and review that document. The CS person could ask any questions or clarifications, because if you go into an implementation or a kickoff call and you don't know everything that's already been shared, like the client's going to immediately be like, wait, what? I already talked about all my goals and things I want to do. Like, why are we having to retread this ground again?
Yeah. And that good fit for who the person they have to speak to next, because it's not always the same. So like we have a few different service lines in our business. And we just have our SDR give a 10-minute call and just go through like these 5 questions. And all it is like, what are you hoping to achieve? What are you like, where are you stuck? What's working now that you don't want to break? And then of course the qualifiers like revenue, employees, timeline, things like that. And so that they might ask some of those questions, they might find it out on the website, but it's their job just to collect that at a bare minimum version 1. As soon as we collect that for that 10-minute call, everything else is narrowed down massively from what the possible conversations could be. So then we're only showing them what they want to see and not like 10,000 things. Because the problem I see a lot of people is they're like, oh, we do this and we do this and we do this and we do this. And then customers fast asleep or moved on.
Unless you're hitting like directly on, okay, here's where I know I make impact, or here's where I know I can impact you. And you're asking the right questions that lead to that part of the like storyline. Like I think there's an obviously room for improvement. And the pullback, I am very passionate about data and consistency throughout the process. From the time someone expresses interest, downloads something, meets you at a conference, whatever the case may be, whatever that conversation is, trying to capture that, what you are alluding to, like making sure that you are setting examples like a founder and a leader, that everybody else knows, okay, this is the behavior that's expected of me at this organization, to capture this data and make sure it's transferred and that knowledge is transferred across departments, because that shows a more seamless and thoughtful customer experience overall.
I mentioned we were talking before, I was doing a lot of travel coming up. One of those things has actually been invited to speak at a customer conference for a particular software product. So they're going to have 50 to 100 people in my little breakout room that are perfect customer, ideal customer. And I know I've got not pitch myself too hard, but at the end there's a slide with a QR code, and there's going to be a video of the session that I just gave that they can download, and that form. But that form is unique. Now, one thing I think people miss out on is they don't, like, if you're going to create a contact form on your website, just have a hidden field with the URL of the page that they were on, or create a custom form for each page or something like that, so that when it comes into the CRM, there's another answer to what they were looking for that you didn't have to ask. I think a lot of people ask questions and then it's relied on a human to put the data in, instead of just not perceiving, but like detecting the kind of data without having to ask that question. Like, by virtue of the page they were on, that's how you know what they were interested in. They were on product A, not on products B or C. So don't go and push those things. Maybe have that conversation later, but don't try to force them down that pipeline.
Yeah, it's uncovering intent without having to directly ask the question in many ways.
Absolutely. And yeah, it just, you seem more of a genius. One thing I have found recently, I've had a bit of a win on, and I teach this in the community. So I run a networking community. Our shared friend, she used this and has recently closed a couple of massive deals. But basically, it's like a deal room. Like, one thing we had this problem recently where we got introduced to this client. They were like a nonprofit. The first person we talked to came in and they went, "Oh no, I'm too busy." They handed off to somebody else. That somebody else came in and then they're like, "Oh yeah, this is good. I've got this question." And then they've gone, "Here is all of their huge documentation pack. We've got 500 to 1,000 employees." And then, so the software companies, yeah, this looks like it's going to be 150 licenses, and they've got dollar signs in their eyes.
Yeah.
And I take one look, I'm like, did anyone ask the customer? Did anyone push back and say, why are you doing it this way?
Yeah.
The answer was no. So I'm like, it's going to be like 20 licenses and this other like portal license, which will cut the cost down. And so then the software company's angry at me. The client's like confused and frustrated. And I'm like, hey, everybody just chill. Let's just zoom out on the conversation. Because they had all these other people involved in the buying process that we were never told about and that was never introduced to us. And so I used this deal room, and I only started using it halfway through the conversation with them because I could see this problem. It's a sales enablement tool. It's like a shared folder. We used to do it with Teams, but it became a nightmare because we're an IT company. So we have to have MFA at the wazoo. And so everybody had a lot of trouble logging in. And so what we did by having this other space, we could just fill it with documents. So it's your sales flyers and your like marketing materials and case studies. It doesn't really matter. It's just a condensed version that's very specific to them. But you can see and you can detect, you can force people to enter a name and an email when they come into the room. So you can identify who else is on the buying team, even if they never tell you, because they share that link. They're now pushing that to the rest of their buy team. And now you understand who to influence, how many people you have to deal with. And now you're getting read metrics on how many times they come in and out of the room. That's one area. Then when you're recording the calls and you're putting notes and summaries back into the room, as new people join, move in, move out of the sales process, now they can catch up just by going to that one space, that they can all ask the same one question and everybody can see the answer. So there's none of this like email here, email there. Like,
yeah. And then if you're working with a customer, now you've developed multiple contacts and you send the email and then no one takes responsibility to respond to your email. Oh, wait, who is supposed to respond to this? What's the call out here? But I appreciate that. And I have seen that at a previous company. We use that similar tool and we'll drop specific documents based on previous conversations. And then to your point, then you get that information, you get the information you gather from phone calls or video recordings or conversations you have. So you get all this data in disparate places, and you have to often like try to like condense that into something that is easy to transfer to other parts of an organization internally. And that can often be a struggle for some people as they buy more pieces of technology to help solve specific pain points and go through that process. And I've had a couple of conversations this week, and we're only halfway through the week here. And I've had a couple of conversations this week where it's like people often look at the technology first versus understanding the underlying pain point or thing they're trying to achieve or what insight they want to gain, and think technology first instead of, hey, is there an easier way to do what you're trying to achieve? in using something you already have or some creative workaround you can develop. There's all sorts of wonderful tools out there now that can help things, but is another tool always the answer to help? Or you're spreading yourself too thin in terms of like data collection and insights that are gained around your customers or prospects?
Yeah, I'm normally hesitant to add something on. Like this one thing I think was like a bit of a godsend. But interesting what you said before about how you send an email out and then everybody is waiting on everybody else. And so nobody actions anything. Or even sometimes people go, I don't understand the process or our process. Like we could document, here's a high level view of our process. Here's a whole bunch of tasks. And then you physically assign to that person, this is what you have to do and by when, so that we get everybody online. And it's like we become the chairman of the board and we group up all of their people inside their organization and say, hey, if you do this, that's going to help that person. And then when they get their thing, that's going to help this person. And then the project's going to go ahead. And then all of this is going to get solved. And all of you are going to look awesome. And you come at it from that advisor perspective. I'm just talking about the way that I do it. But
Yeah.
I know that has been like pretty impactful for us anyway.
No, it's important in all relationships with customers or even prospects to some degree to understand and hold each other accountable. Like I was at an organization where they had like a kind of a sales plan that they would put together with their champion, basically to say, okay, here's the timeline, here's the thing we know we have to hit, here's a deadline to hit a certain impact that the product or service can provide. Working backwards from there, what is our timeline? Who has to do what at this point? You have to understand their contracting process. So having that accountability and who owns which piece, what is internal to the organization doing the selling and what's external to the client and your champion or the buying team or whoever might be involved, having that documented is important. So you can hold each other accountable. And okay, if you're invested, you're going to actually take time to work through this with me. And that's also a very positive sign. This is going to get to close because we know the impact we're going to have, we know when that impact is going to happen, and then have the timeline moving backwards from there to get to that close. The other piece of the equation is then what happens once they sign? Like, how does that impact transfer to the other teams internally to go through that process?
Like there is a bit of the selling process that happens before, during, and after the proposal. That's the bit that I wanted to solve. And yes, on the internal side, I would say CRM all day long. Before, during, and after is you got your CRM side, then it goes into CRM/projects, like depending on what business you have, whether it's product or service. Yeah, for us, it's very much service. But if at that point you might be involving product teams, shipping teams to understand, do we have the stuff in stock, which you can see that in the system, still requires the warehouse people, blah, blah, blah. Like you could, if you're selling a one-off thing, whatever, box it up, ship it. What I think we're talking about more is like where you are building the idea of a long-term contract or an arrangement or an agreement. You might be selling 50 pallets a week of this particular product. That is something that requires the negotiation. And there's before, during, and after, because if they sign and then it's like crickets, you're like, the sales team are like, woo, yeah, amazing. We've got our contract over the line. Then accounts are like a bit slow. And then maybe projects go, we don't know what was sold. And so that gap right there can kill everything. And then they don't send the check because, oh, we signed it, but you didn't do anything. So we're not going to do anything. We're just going to go somewhere else. Deals can still fall over after they're signed.
Correct. Yeah. And that's why it's important to have that kind of data consistency in the documentation and on a process that everybody understands. And like, to the extent you can automate that, great. I'm a big fan of like win emails, and there's two different versions. There's one that's hooray, we won this deal. And then there's a version with greater detail. If the sales rep has done a good job in the CRM of capturing the baseline data, like here's their goals, here's the key players involved. And that can go to any kind of internal team members, implementation team, deliverable team, account managers, customer success, whatever it might be, to automate the deeper level information that they need to know in like an email format. That like as soon as that opportunity is closed won, here's the data it's captured, and email goes into their inbox. And then if they have questions, that's when they can say, hey, can we chat about this real quick? I want to make sure I understand everything. So having that consistent flow of data is a good thing, because I agree with you. Yeah, you can have a sales rep that did a great job of selling whatever is happening, but if it starts to slip the moment they sign a contract and things aren't hitting as expected, they could churn, they could drop, they could say, this isn't working out the way I thought it would. I was sold this, or it took too long to get whatever widget we were expecting, or we're now 3 to 6 months in, and I was expecting to have this up and running in 90 days.
I'm going to let you finish real quick, but first, a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is sponsored by Sugar CRM. If your team is still running sales from spreadsheets or chasing deals based on guesswork, you're not alone. B2B sales can be messy and complex. Sugar CRM helps you clean it up, pulling your accounts, pipeline, and your customer history into one place. You'll know exactly who to call, when to follow up, and what to sell next, with smart suggestions to help you close more deals. Ready to unlock your sales potential? Visit sugarcrm.com today.
All right, I was going for Kanye there. I don't know if that worked, but at least it's a bit of a laugh. But yeah, what you're saying there, one thing that made me think of was in some platforms you have there, it goes, yeah, we want data and we're going to use tags. And like tags are fine in some platforms, they're a little bit more controlled, but in others, it's like anyone can make a tag. And so you got one person goes, oh, it's a lead. Another person goes, it's a prospect. Somebody else goes, it's a possibility or an opportunity. And then there's various misspellings. But the problem is you can't then report on it. You can't effectively pull, or what did that person think of when they thought that word or when they thought that concept and then decided to name it? Did they come up with some wacky term that they wanted, or did they come up with something that everybody understood? And the other thing too is sometimes people add fields in unnecessarily, and then you end up with this mess of stuff in the CRM and no one can interpret it. Everybody's trying to get in there and see, trying to figure out what's going on, and then there's two fields for the same thing. They named it this day, this thing on this day, and then 6 months later they're like, oh, we need a field for this. And then they, instead of looking through and going, what do we actually need? And to your point there about like the goals and that sort of stuff, I think you really need to think about the heavy content fields. If you go into a needs analysis with like 100 questions, don't put that in your CRM. Just have that in a document that attaches in your like attachments, and only have the key high level, reportable, valuable, long-term, like that's going to build you a picture of what's going to come up in the future. That's what's going to be useful in text or in a pick list value or a number field or something like that. You definitely have to have the minimums, like your business address, your tax number, I like to use brackets. Sometimes platforms ask for, what's your revenue? And then the client gets confused. They're like, oh, $384,268.48. No, you're just below. What brackets do you need? Like I spoke to one of the top peoples in SAP, and they're like, oh, people organize their industry categories in funny ways. I'm like, no, they organize their industry category in ways that are relevant to them. Just because you're SAP and you're like that big doesn't mean that everybody else can't go, I deal with this person and this person, and so those are my categories. Or the other one was like revenue brackets. Might be the conversation we have with someone that's under $1 million is totally different to someone that we have is $1 to $5 million, is totally different from someone who is 5 and above. The approach just has to change because you have to right size the solution to the client. If you come in going all guns are blazing, like PwC or Deloitte, to go, yes, we're going to charge you $2,000 an hour and it's a $14 million project. This one man band small business is going to look at you and go, you're absolutely off your tree. What are the things that are going to allow you to have a better conversation? I like relationship health. How good is the relationship with the person? Maybe there's like account growth capacity, low, medium, or high. Is that account going to always be low because they're a slow growing? Maybe they only care about putting food on the table and getting to the next day, or they're like, man, we are so keen to grow. Maybe they're a massive company and you're only doing that much, so your account growth could be huge.
So there's all that potential. I definitely agree with you there in terms of what can be done, but it comes down to like definition. What are the key things that we know you are important as a CRM administrator in a few different organizations? When someone asks to add a new field, they'd be like, what's its purpose? Who's going to use it? Who's going to own keeping it updated? Why is this needed? Especially if it was like something on an opportunity or a contact or an account. If it was already like a noisy page layout in my mind, like I would always ask, what is this for? What's the intention? And if we're doing this, can we take away this field that absolutely nobody uses and we're not using in any sort of report? Okay, I'll give you this if we can take away this thing. And in taking some time to do some analysis of what fields are used across like big objects in your CRM is important. I've done that at a couple different organizations to get to a base level to understand, okay, what's noise, what's real, and then like defining that and making sure people are enabled around that to understand, here's what we're looking at from a reporting perspective, here's what we expect you to fill out consistently across opportunities or contact records or whatever the case may be. So that way everybody is speaking a similar language, and that helps create that foundation to ensure success, and you're engaging with the right people and having the right conversations with the right people.
I like to walk around the office and then basically sit behind the different roles. Like I was talking to the accounts guy the other day, and I'm looking over his shoulder. I'm like, what do you need? What do you not need that's on that screen? And you cut down a view. Now that's dangerous as well, because if you create too many visions of what is required on a page, then the admin is stuck updating all of them on a regular basis. Like you don't want to have to make one change and then they've got to go back through 25 iterations to make that same change. And they forgot one. That guy didn't have the access to the information that they were supposed to have. And then this fell over in the process, like too much, too less. But imagine I just went through and I created one basic view where I just took away all this behind the scenes guff for them. We've got it hooked into Eventbrite. And so there's an Eventbrite order ID when someone registers for an event that comes through. No one needs to see that. It's a behind the scenes thing. There's some like SMS code stuff, like number verified, yes, no, whatever. They've got the teams have the ability to see if someone has complained about an SMS or being sent an SMS, we can manually opt them out. They can opt themselves out. They have to opt themselves in. So sometimes they do that and then change their mind, but then can't be bothered to actually do the task of unsubscribing. And so they like send you an angry email or something. You're like, okay, I will unsubscribe you. That is fine. You can do it yourself. The link is on the bottom. Like,
right.
yeah, to begin with. But I think that by minimizing all of the marketing person is going to see a whole bunch of stuff that's different to the salesperson, that's different to the finance person, but all of them are going to see a lot of common information, and different people need different things at different stages. So like you've got things like Salesforce, which is you could build 1,000,001 permission sets and pages and dreams of what people can see. And then it becomes an absolute nightmare trying to maintain, because this guy needed that permission set. And then, they want to be able to click this other field, but then you have to do 5 layers deep of permission sets to get that one field to display on their page. And then, no, they want to see it at the top of the page instead of no. This is a guy here. Yeah.
I know. I am a certified Salesforce administrator. I've taken that exam. I've gone through the process, but like there are a lot of different ways to set up those permissions in terms of visibility and access and editing, and like so many different permutations that you can create that it can become unwieldy. So I think that's why it's good to have, here's the baseline that everybody's going to see. And that of course can change and evolve and adjust as your organization does. Like the comment you were making about the different like dollar ranges you put in for revenue for a company profile, that can of course change and grow as an organization does. But like you need to have some sort of baseline to build from and agree, like here's universally what people need to see. And then you can start to iterate as needed and as makes sense. Because you don't want to, if one rep likes to see this thing and another rep likes to see another, because you have reps that are like very CRM friendly and you have reps that are wildly CRM averse. So the ones that are averse don't really care. They're like, okay, I'll just move this to close on once I know I have the deal done, versus the others who are very detail oriented. And I've seen these at organizations in the past where like they have thorough notes and they're super detail oriented. And then another one where it's, I created this opportunity the day before I got the contract signed and now I'm going to close it. That hurts my brain a little bit. But you do have those scenarios, and you need to find the balance of those two individuals and try to encourage the one who is averse to say, oh, here's why this is good for the whole organization.
There's this creative tension you create. Yeah, like you say, you've got people at the opposite ends of the spectrum. I usually give this explanation when you've got those users that want something simple. That sometimes there's too simple. And you'd said this before, like what are the objectives of the company? What's the underlying thing that the people need to know? Forecasting would be the thing for why you would put a deal in at the start to go, here's this deal. We think it's at about 10% probability of closing. That probability then tells the directors and the finance team, this is how much we see in the pipeline do we need to start hiring or do we need to start firing? Like, I would want to know how stable the future growth of my company is, whether or not I can make this move or that move. And you're going to grow much faster because you're just going to make better decisions based on more accurate, more real-time data. So is that something that is worth being lazy for? I would have a performance discussion with that sales rep, to be honest. Right. And we are a CRM company, particularly in ours, like we implement it all day, every day. So if you can't use a CRM in a CRM company, find another job.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the joke I've often made about Salesforce, for a tool called Salesforce, salespeople don't like to use it in most cases. Like that's the old joke. And it's interesting, but yeah, I agree. It should be like a performance conversation. And I've had conversations with like CROs when I was doing ops roles about making like data entry align on their like comp plan. Hey, if your data isn't meeting this certain criteria, then you're going to miss a certain spiff, or whatever the case may be. If you're not playing nicely with the rest of the organization, because all that data that is captured and the conversations you have is very useful to other teams internally. So it's good to have those conversations and set those expectations. And most people get it. Most people, like, they just feel it's unwieldy. So there are ways to automate some of that data capture. And there are tools out there now that can assist with all that. So you can make it easier for them, but it still should be part of their daily, weekly routine in terms of, I had this conversation, let me take 5 minutes to do this real quick type thing.
Sometimes it's just a way to reframe it. I heard one, not a CRM problem, but sales cold calls. Like they were framing that as very negative, like they had a lot of rejection. These people had anxiety. And so they hired a sales coach that came in and they basically said, look, we actually want you to get 10 no's as fast as possible. And whoever gets 10 no's first wins free lunch or gift card or something like that. And so then instead of it being this negative thing of getting no's, people were like trying to get to 10 no's as fast as possible to get that thing. And so that made the start of the day positive. And then the conversation was, oh no, I was going to win, but this guy said yes. And then we were on like, damn it. And like that changed the dynamic, but the dynamic and the perspective and the perception around that process. So maybe like what you said, it's around the incentivization and how to frame it, definitely.
And as a former colleague used to say, salespeople are coin operated. So like how you pay them is how they will then change their behavior to match that.
There is definitely ways to stuff that up, as for damn sure. Like we're talking a lot about CRM, but I like to think of it more of XRM. Replace the C of customer with X being the unknown quantity. We can swap it out with HRM. Human relationships management, employee relationship, partners, suppliers. And the big one I would say is like referrals. Now, I have a very big sort of push, partly through building our community, is not only helping people around us, but it's also referrer activation, because we have a lot of people in our network. We have a lot of people that we work very closely with. But if you're not in their court, showing up, reminding them you exist, staying friendly, then you'll just become a distant memory and they're not really going to pay attention or refer or do anything like that. I know that it's super beneficial to the company to get a referral because it's 5 times more likely to buy. They are truly better in terms of a lead as opposed to Google or some kind of random channel like that. What do you do? What's your magic? What's your secret?
So I think there's a couple different ways to look at this. So one, going to your point about community, I think building communities is a good way to do this. I did this at a company, built out a kind of a community that was built on Salesforce experiences. But so we monitored their support tickets. We had a regular posting of topics. Like I worked with our marketing team and our product team to have a regular cadence of posts that we would put out there for people to engage with and ask questions. And we put people into like cohorts, both regionally and by size of institution, to build that connectivity. And that helped getting people talk to each other and sharing best practices. The other way to do this is to build out formal kind of referral programs for those who are strong users overall. Good example. So we had a client in my last company I was working for, and he was great power user, and he referred us to at least 2 or 3 other schools within the state of Florida. And he was also very demanding of the product. So we gave him a little more white glove treatment because he was referring these other schools that ended up closing, to your point, closed much quicker. So he had a lot of requests for feature requests, and we'd work with him and prioritize and separate expectations around timeline to deliver on those requests. But building out a formal program, and maybe we give them a little discount on renewal, or maybe we'd send them a nice little swag package as a thank you to say, hey, thank you for growing this business, that kind of stuff. So you can do it in terms of like formal program. You can do it in terms of building out communities. And the other way to do this is like product advisory boards, like getting your clients to come in and provide feedback and having a regular meeting cadence around that, either virtually or in person if possible, if budget allows, gives time and space for those clients to feel like they're tighter in, and they're more likely to refer you to others because they feel included, they feel like they're influencing product development, and they're very much engaged and feel part of the organization and more of a partnership, even though they're a customer, but it feels like more of a partnership, and that helps build out stronger referral programs.
Yeah, like shapes so many things down the line, like better, not only better referrals, better product, better customer complaints handling. You might get complaints that you wouldn't get by waiting for that form to be completed in the app or wherever. People are going to go, oh, you know what, I really don't like this thing. Or, hey, I really liked this thing. Like, how often do you have someone come in and go, wow, this feature was amazing? I think people just expect everything to work the way they think it should work.
Right.
And when it does, they're like, like having someone to appreciate one thing then makes you go, that's a selling point. Now we can market that. We'll use that like hey, we have this amazing feature that does this, and it saves you so much time. Like you could have stumbled across it and you go just whatever, but to them it was like amazing. So I think that there's a lot of capability in improving a number of things, not just your referral activation, by having that customer community for damn sure.
Yeah. And if you're building that kind of relationship and trust, that speaks well to like your overall retention. If you're looking at NRR and GRR as an organization, like having that level of relationship with your customers creates more stability in it long term. You know that you're going to be sitting at 95 plus retention rate and looking at NRR, GRR, like maybe 100% plus as they're growing annually and buying more products from you because they feel like a partner and someone they can rely on.
You can grow on recurring revenue. You can't grow on unstable, unpredictable revenue. Like for the most part, we've been a projects organization, particularly early on. Like it's that kill a bear, eat a bear. You find a project, at the end of the project, you're desperate to find the next project. And only over the last few years where we've transitioned to, we've got software licenses, we've got memberships, we've got hosting, web infrastructure services, and someone's got a server or someone's got MSP license services, which is like on a per user basis. It's all recurring, and where the next sort of the power bill is going to get paid out of, or where so you might have some constraints at times, but I think people grossly miscalculate the value of growing that recurring revenue. And there's ain't nothing like a customer coming back. Like even if it's not technically like recurring revenue, it's repeat revenue, which is almost good. So if you can get that repeat revenue to turn also into recurring revenue, even if only on a small thing, I would just, even if you had a $5 add-on every month, anything you can do that's recurring is amazing. Because then, particularly if it's something that, like imagine a lost leader, but it was like something that was so amazing as a product or service. And if you had your main product or service where you made all your money, if that one thing reminded that person every month by charging their card or whatever it is, like obviously money coming out feels like a negative, but if it was something that was like, they look at their statement and they're like, oh, I'm so glad I have that. I don't know. Not saying protection on your iPhone, but
I get what you're saying. So like you've created an impact, and going back to the revenue recognition book I was talking about earlier in that SPICE. So it's situation, pain, impact, critical event, decision. So knowing the impact and the critical event, like to your point, for anything you're delivering, if you're doing that, and then you start to diversify what you offer or other products, other the products, you acquire another technology company, and then you start to pitch that, like having additional white space or room to grow and push, if you are making that impact, even if it's not a recurring revenue situation, they're still going to come back to you because they feel like, okay, this person or this company has helped me in the past. I trust them to do this other thing or help me with this thing as well. Or I need this help. I need help again. So let me go back to them and have that conversation again. So, and especially early days, like it's all about referrals. Like I know when I was doing fractional consulting work, it was all about referrals. And the customers I did land were referrals. Like Cold outreach, sure, I got some results and some conversations going, but like it was almost exclusively referrals. And everybody I've talked to that does their own thing, it's all about having that referral network and expanding your network and finding those communities where people are sharing like, oh, yeah, I do need help with this particular thing. Let's have a conversation, figure this out. A warm intro, to your point, is going to be much easier to get to close and more quickly.
I think there's a flip side to this, is that customer service, good customer service, can repair and grow through acquisition. So a friend of mine, he had like 70 staff. He runs an IT company. He acquired another IT company from a private equity firm. So the private equity, basically, if anybody doesn't really know much about private equity, they come in and they go, how much money can we make out of this? Cut expenses, fire people, boost sales and marketing, drive a hard bargain, try to run up the contracts. So anyway, naturally, the clients of that company weren't particularly happy. However, they had a lot of big IT contracts that are generally 3 to 5 years long, and they're basically stuck in this contract, and they hate their provider because they've just been rated for cash and for profitability, for sale price. And so he acquired them, but basically, because they were all on contract and couldn't leave, he had an opportunity to turn them around. Within 12 months, most of them had calmed down, became okay with the transition. So he went from himself at that time, went from 70 staff to 170 staff. And they now had their own internal integration struggles. So there's like an internal customer service. But then once they resolved that, and then they got their own teams involved and changed the policies and the procedures and changed the perspective of the firm and improved the service quality, improved this, improved that, like they had time to fix that. Yeah, they would have had some contracts lapse in that time, but for the majority, they had very long-term agreements. So once they got through that, now they have a huge customer base, because they basically bought this company for cheap because the private equity didn't know how to run it. They destroyed it and they were losing money. Or I think they got what they wanted out of it and they were ready to ship it. And effectively what they then did was turn this company around, got all of those customers, turned them actually now into advocates, and now they're like killing it. So
That's great.
It's an amazing thing what you can do by just having a happy customer.
Correct. Yeah. And having individuals who know and understand what that delivery looks like, how to build those relationships, how to deliver consistently, how to set right expectations. That's important. And like a good example I have from my last company, it was a virtual charter school that was a bit oversold on what the new version of the platform could do. So I went in with the solutions engineer, the account manager I was working with, and reset expectations. They had high expectations of the platform be able to do this particular thing, and it got there, but it wasn't exactly meeting their expectations. So just had a very open, transparent conversation and set a timeline of, okay, here are the feature requests that you have. Here's a high level timeline of when we will get there, of delivering those and just getting them back to ground. And also understanding they had some other pain points that we knew we could address more quickly with some like specific dashboards they were looking for, things of that nature. So addressing those and then setting expectations around, here's what we'll get to where you want to get to in terms of this particular product feature, change the dynamic of that relationship a lot. And I think it's just listening, understanding, communicating, and setting clear expectations that changes the dynamic. And again, they become a referral for us. Like they have referred business for us again. So like that, having those good relationships and changing and being engaging and making sure you're consistent in how you deliver, that changes everything.
I don't know, it's the sales person's job to make it look good and to get the client over the line. And like that whole thing about whether the feature is overstated or not. I think sometimes you can tick the box with a big heavy Sharpie. You can do it with a pencil or a crayon. Like, we got there, but it's a horrendous like application or solution to that problem. Like PwC, Deloitte, or Oracle, all of these have been told off because they've lost contracts or sued because they've at some point overstated the capabilities of the platform. And so in the sales process, they've basically shot themselves in the foot, and then the clients probably paid $200 million to get this thing implemented. I think there was some British city council, not London, but another major city. They were going to implement Oracle. then they don't quote me on this, but like a $200 million lawsuit against Oracle for selling the product to them. And so basically the implementation project failed.
Okay.
And it was, there's heaps of these. Like there's a podcast where he's a dynamics consultant and he does failed implementations. All he does is cover failed implementations, like what went wrong, because that's a great way to learn of what not to do, so that when you want to do it properly, you do it properly. And this other one, it was like they charged $170 million to this. They were like like a TV channel or something like that. And so they were going to migrate onto Dynamics. And I think they were hired something like Bain and Company or one of these very large consulting, McKinsey-like kind of consulting.
Yep.
And at the start of that, the contract said something like, we will not raise the hourly rate within the first 30 days. So of course, what happens at 31? Double, triple, I don't know.
Yeah.
Could have been anything. But yeah, then I think they burned through $70 million, then had to pay another $100 million to try and get this thing to work. And then they ended up successfully, no, I think they sued, but only recovered $100 million. So they basically still with $70 million. So they still would have been like massively profitable in that. Like the project failed because they didn't communicate. Like obviously it's a lot bigger. So all of the things we're talking about, like that customer success, that having that conversation, making sure the features are right. It doesn't matter how big the project is. That just has the influence on the complexity of the conversation. But the points are the same. Doesn't matter if you're a 5-person company or a 5,000 or a 50,000 person company. You still need to make sure that the solution is right, that everybody's across and trained, that everybody knows what the requirements are, that we've had time to talk about it, we've engaged people within the groups and blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
We could talk for the next 8 hours, I'm sure.
We absolutely could. But yeah, like in my mind, it's always being curious at every point in the relationship with whoever you're working with. And like the other way to say it, discovery never ends. If you're working with a company and that company is growing and changing, like you're going to continuously do discovery. You're going to find new people to work with. You're going to find new ways to give those inroads. So constantly curious is something I like love to live by.
Yeah.
And professionally persistent. If someone's not responding, be professionally persistent and make sure they're paying attention to you. But being curious at all points of time, that just helps so much. And being overly communicative in those instances and setting the right expectations and having good baseline information helps with all of this. Going back to the original point, but just to build on all this, I think that's where things change for an organization. Like your friend acquiring that other services company, like was a good example of how you can shift perception. And you have the benefit of multi-year contracts. And if you have multi-year contracts, you can do that. You can shift those dynamics and those relationships. But it all comes down to like resetting expectations and making sure you know where you make impact.
I think at the start of that point, you mentioned how being over communicative and re-engaging and that the client changed along the way. We've got that right now. We started with them like 12 months ago and they're like, we've got no money, but we need to do this massive thing. And we're like, okay, we'll start you on a retainer. So we start building some stuff out, just chipping away. We're dealing with complex sort of data requirements and multiple people that are not really like tech savvy, but they're professionals. So you have to still be respectful and shape it in a way, listen, explain, re-explain. And they've drifted away. Their CFO stepped in and we started working with him. And then he's, oh yeah, we want to put you guys on pause. And we think we're kicking goals. We're rolling this out, roll that out. We know we saw their grand master plan and we're building towards that. And we did. We rolled out some very good things, but we had a lot more to do. And then they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna pause the retainer. Then we've got somebody else in to be like a CTR. We could have done that. And we're gonna do like a full review, and then we're gonna come back and do a project. I'm like, what happened? What changed? They're like, we've grown significantly in that time, and now we need to take a different approach. We didn't communicate that to us at any point and think, yeah, maybe we should have been like kicking the tires a bit more. We should have gone in a bit more. But I got a meeting on Friday with the CEO and founder, so let's see where that goes. I reckon we could make some stuff happen. You live, you learn. We've done a lot of what we do now. We do a lot of what we do now because we stuffed it up at some point.
Correct. It goes back to changing your perception of, okay,
Yeah.
what is this teaching me? There's an opportunity to learn when you win.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity to learn when you lose. And it's all about your perception and how you take that on. And I'm a big fan of, in team meetings, I'll do hits and misses. What was a hit? What was a miss? And then let's discuss as a team or one-to-one and say, okay, what can we learn here? What can we do differently? How can we improve going forward?
Yeah. That what I was talking about at the start when we were talking about that deal room thing, that was quite a complex process. And I think the software company that we're dealing with, because we resell their product, they didn't know how to handle it. So we stepped in, made it happen, and the deposit came through tonight.
Nice.
We're away. Yeah. So now we've got the project teams onto it, and there's like another mid six figures in the pipeline of projects. So this is phase 1, and then there's like phase 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I think broadly, if we're more, you can play a bigger game. Like the more intelligent you have your process nailed out, like that front end, that conversation all the way through the customer success, your project size or your deal volume can go up. The type of client that you can handle increase. The little stuff tends to fall away because you're outpacing all the dumb conversations. You're getting rid of them faster. It's like the 80-20 rule. Just be better in the 20% and you'll get 80% more of the business and all that. So I think there's a lot of good stuff there. We've covered a lot.
We have.
I think we
did.
We had a plan. I think we binned it, but we covered most of the stuff anyway. So that was pretty good.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It was very good.
Yeah. Like when the conversation flows, you get a lot more good stuff out there. I really appreciate having you on today. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments. Every time you ask a question, give us a little comment. It helps us grow the podcast. You can also check out the Relevate community. And when you ask a question in there, we get to provide an answer, not only for you, but for everybody else in the community. And it helps build a better knowledge base on, or the collective intelligence of all the people in the community that bring together a wealth of knowledge around their fields and sales, marketing, and technology. But nonetheless, thank you very much for watching. We hope to see you next time.